Tonight we talk about our top 5 SEC teams and what is going on with this AP poll. Grab a drink and join us on tonight's Tailgate. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Luke with the Tailgate. As always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Michael and Dennis.
That's me. And I guess I'm the other one, whichever one the Michael's not claiming.
Yeah.
I mean, I studied on that, but yeah.
I'm the one that Michael's not.
Usually I do my introductions.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. You can start doing it. Everybody knows who you are, Dennis. You're the one that's not bald and white.
It's true. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. You're our only difference in this podcast. Well, guys, what's happening? We're talking some AP 25, top 25 AP coming out 3 weeks. What is it? 3 weeks before the season starts now?
Yeah, basically 2.5, roughly
2.5. Depends on when this gets put up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
it's football month. That's all I know.
That's right. We are a month away. Less than a month.
Just a few days away.
This is crazy. So AP top 25.
Oh man.
Before anybody has even stepped on the field.
That means that it's going to be good. That's how
right.
You know. They're judging purely off of roster talent and how talented the coaches are. Who cares about strength of schedule, strength of resume,
No.
Yeah.
We're just gonna put a bunch of monkeys in a room and have them decide who the top teams are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. And for the most part, I mean, the little we've talked to each other about this, for the most part, it's okay. It's not bad.
Yeah.
But there are some question marks, some things that I don't necessarily agree with.
Well, then why don't you start us off? Like, what are some highlights that you're like, why?
So
I imagine.
So no, and here goes. This goes back to my point when we talked about our Big Ten teams. When I said, you can kind of throw whoever around. There are some teams, those top 3 teams, I'm okay with. So we have Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon. Any order of those 3, I'm not really going to argue with. I think in terms of talent, coaching, kind of all that, they're all pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with those. The one that I don't get is Michigan at number 9. I know that they are defending national champions.
Sure.
I know that a lot of people, I think defending national champions usually get a pretty lenient position ranking in these polls. I don't know if that's because just people aren't looking or they're trying to be nice. But I don't even know that I'd have them in my top 15 to start the season. So you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, like the thing is, like at the end of the day, I agree with you that Michigan shouldn't be in the top 10. They lost too many key players. While they've got some good people returning, they also lost their entire coaching staff. We like where their coaching staff is headed, but that doesn't necessarily mean or equate, just like Bama, doesn't equate to wins. So,
right.
And while it's true that, the fact that you won the national championship gives you some credence to being in the top 25 or even the top 15 potentially, for the following year, the fact that Washington, who played also in the national championship, again, they didn't win, they're nowhere to be found in the top 25, and they underwent basically the exact same coaching change. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a legitimate statement that can be made there about the AP ranking those teams competitively in that regard and accurately. The biggest ones for me, I've got a couple. I'm going to say one this about Michigan, though. I think the part you may be forgetting that the press probably does know really well is that Michigan probably still has some leftover tape from the teams that they're going to play this year. Like, let's rank it somewhat high so they could be, we knew it was coming. We knew how they were going to
right.
That's
so they can
fair.
claim that from the beginning.
That's fair.
That is fair.
Yeah, we're gonna have some Michigan fans that are gonna hate on us for that one, but you know what?
That's okay.
You know, the NCAA has yet to rule, and I've got a feeling they're gonna not be lenient.
And so you get ruled on, you're innocent.
Well,
Well, I will say it is good for Michigan that they decided not to allow Harbaugh to come back and be the honorary captain. And
Michigan didn't put that. Harbaugh is the one that actually said that. He's like, I ain't going back. I know.
well, yeah,
I ain't going back.
them like that. That was the thing, as I was seeing so many fans being like, "Oh, I love this. It's going to be a giant middle finger to the NCAA," and I'm like, "That's not what you want right now.
no,
You
still have-
don't want middle fingers. You want nice.
you have
Play
a
nice
much
right now.
worse investigation going on right now. You do not want the nonsense of the NCAA even matter at you.
Yeah,
So I kind of alluded to it in my previous comment, though. One of my issues is Alabama being at number 5. You lose the majority of your team. You have a complete turnover of coaching staff. You cannot sit there and claim to me, like, I'm not saying that DeBoer is going to be bad. He very easily could be top 5, because again, Washington. But it doesn't change the fact that you're talking about a major change of power in the Southeast. And DeBoer has to prove himself. He still has to prove himself. And again, regardless of what people want to say, like, oh, well, he's a proven winner wherever he's gone, his record is significantly smaller than most other head coaches in the SEC. Yeah. So he's just played he's been a head coach fewer seasons than most of the coaches in the SEC. So he still has a lot to prove himself as a head coach. I really liked him. I said that last year when he was doing really well with Washington. I really like him. I think he's got a ton of character, and I think he'll be really good for Alabama. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he goes 9-3 this year and Alabama fans get upset. The other thing is, the reason why I'm frustrated with it is because of the teams that are behind them. You've got Ole Miss, who's returning a ton of production, who has an already proven SEC head coach, whether I like him or not, who should be who easily won their bowl game, because let's remember, Alabama didn't win their bowl game either. So they technically lost to Michigan. And so Ole Miss, they won their bowl game, and they're returning a ton of their production, and they added a ton of incredible talent in the portal. They're expected. Yeah, they're expected. I expect Ole Miss, and we'll get into this a little bit later, I expect them to be vying more for a national championship than Alabama this year. And so I think that they needed to be number 5. I have an issue with Penn State being in the top 10 at all. They were not great last year. They lost drastically to Ole Miss in their in their bowl game. It was not a good game for them. And I didn't see enough of improvement in them on the offseason to warrant such a giant jump, especially when you're keeping teams like Missouri or Utah out of the top 10, who have a better reason to be there, at least initially. So, but aside from that, I didn't really have too many other issues aside from Texas A&M being in the top 25. I love their coaching hire. They're tons of great talent, but dude has to prove himself. It's the same argument as DeBoer. Has to prove himself. Brand new coach, and these brand new coaches at their new locations could either do incredibly well, or they might be just terrible.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about new coaches is, if I was doing one of these polls, a new coach, especially let's just focus on DeBoer here, right?
Sure.
So DeBoer, as you said, I love DeBoer. I think he's a great coach. I loved the hire. I love what he did in Washington. Yes, he's a proven winner, but he's not a proven winner in the SEC.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in going from, I can't even remember where he was before Washington, but going from there to Washington. Now, that's a big jump, and he did, what's that?
He was at Fresno State.
Fresno State. Okay, so that's a big jump going from Fresno State to Washington. And then within, 2 or 3 years, taking them to a national championship. Very, great coaching. There you go. That's awesome. But going into the SEC, is a different beast all in itself. I think that at least drops you 2 or 3 spots.
Yeah.
You know, if you're thinking that Alabama's 5, okay, that's fine. New coach, a little bit of turnover on the roster, even though he did a really good job of maintaining a lot of the guys and bringing, people in. But again, new coach, SEC, drop him to 7, drop him to 8. I think that is more than fair. I'm with you on Penn State. I think Penn State, their overarching, you look at their just James Franklin's time there.
Mhm.
Typically they don't do as good as they should.
Mhm.
I think that he's had some big games, but I definitely think them being in the top 10 is not where they should be. The only other one that I was looking through here, because again, these AP polls, before anybody's played, we're looking at, who's hurt, we're looking at coaching, we're looking at talent, all that kind of stuff. But USC in the top 25, I think you go back to what they looked like last year. I think a lot of people are very high on USC because of their bowl game, because of what they saw in a bowl game that honestly I don't think mattered very much. You have new defensive coordinator that comes in. Obviously, I don't know that he could be much worse than the Grinch, but we still don't know. We still don't know what's going on with that. I don't see USC at least starting off in the top 25. If they end up there because they played well all year, great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they should be starting off there.
No, I mean, I kind of agree with both y'all. I have a mixture of saying. I also kind of disagree with it. I actually do have high hopes for Bama, but as Michael said, at 5, I do believe that is a bit high. I do believe in DeBoer, and I feel like with Milroe, it's a completely different beast when it comes to the SEC compared to the Pac, compared to the Mountain West, and even compared to, like, I think before DeBoer was at like South Dakota, I think, or something like that. Yes, he's won basically everywhere he's gone. I think having Milroe already a quarterback that's been shown that he has been proven to be able to play in the SEC, is going to be a strong advantage to the board. Because Michael Penix, before he went to Washington, or at his time was Washington, people knew of him. People knew that he was a good quarterback.
Sure.
I don't think people really had an idea like how great he could actually be.
Yeah,
sure. Before DeBoer has even gotten his hands on, has already kind of shown, hey, these little kind of like glimpse of like great talent, and the fact that he's able to do both with, mind you, both healthy knees compared to Penix.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to be able to do more, I feel like, with an offensive mind than he was able to do with Saban, and basically Saban's entire, army of coaches that he's always groomed from the very beginning. But just like how you were saying, Luke, I think 5 is also, again, too high. But if they were like 7, 8, I would actually be happy with that, because Ole Miss, I feel like, should have had that number 5 spot. I will strongly agree. Hey, they've had a strong team last year. They bought a whole lot of players. They're in the win now season mode, very similar to Ohio State, just now with the same bag. So I feel like Ole Miss should have been a lot higher. Penn State, I agree with, should have been there. Notre Dame is one of those things where, like, I can see the argument there. I feel like they're at the very, very top, and they could possibly be at number 7. Like, I think they'll do well just because of who they are. But I like USC personally, honestly, at 23. Man, it's like maybe people because you have that Pac Club. But I do like them there. I feel
Former Pac Clubs. Former Pac Clubs.
Former. My bad. Former. So, like, being 23, 24, 25, I feel like is an ideal spot. If they were in even 20 or even higher than that, I feel like then I would agree 100% with you. I feel like, hey, you're just too high.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think talent-wise, USC is. I think talent-wise, they're a top 20 team. I just think that with what they did last year, that they shouldn't have put them in the top 25. Can they earn their way back? But again, I'm not gonna sit here and get animatedly pissed off because they're in the top 25.
Yeah.
But I just don't think they should be there.
I would have loved to see Utah honestly in the top 10. I feel like they definitely deserved it. They bring in a good chunk of their team. Like, they're, I feel like, one of the more consistent just coaching staffs and just team overall, even when their team is all the way completely hurt, which is incredible to see by any team by any means.
Mhm.
Missouri, I feel like they're going to be top 10 for a good chunk of the season next year just because they're easy schedule, to be honest.
Schedule.
Like they got great players, but their easy schedule is good, lazy. But Utah, I feel like should have been top 10. I feel like the only thing that probably hindered them from being in the top 10 was the fact that coming into a new conference that I feel like they have all the tools and everything necessary to actually run away with the Big 12. So the one thing I'm kind of sad not seeing the top 25 though, I gotta have to say it, Louisville. I kind of have to say it, Louisville.
So
I don't know why I was
the bandwagon like I did.
I don't know why I was there. I was there, like they got half a team. You telling me half their team is in the top 25? The other half is not in the top 100.
But remember, they got Cade McNamara. We talked about this on our Big Ten episode.
Did you see how he threw one pass to like 17?
Again,
but he's better than the quarterback last.
Yeah, better than Deacon Hill is not better. That's going from like atrocious to bad. So yeah, I don't think Iowa should be in the top 25 at all.
No, I don't think so either.
I feel like that should have been Louisville, to be honest. Maybe it's
their defense is a top 15 defense, but their offense is like a bottom 15 defense.
If we're doing defense, I feel like easily the top 15. Right.
So when you average out top 15 defense and bottom 15 offense, then you're like a 60 team.
How many teams are in Division One?
Right.
Right.
Oh, what's it? 130? 134? 132?
So it would be 136.
Right.
Yeah. They're behind the first place team.
Right. These FCS teams are gonna
they're behind that team. I'd rather take that team over Iowa.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, so we talk about the AP. We could talk about this all night.
Sure.
Let's actually turn our focus to a far more accurate ranking. Our top 5 SEC teams.
Well, it depends on whose ranking we're talking about.
Well, no, listen. I will say our top 5 SEC are going to be more accurate than the AP is going to ever put out.
I would agree.
So
you have to go first, Michael. This is your conference.
Oh, this is my conference.
That's right.
So
you know better than me and Luke. So I'm just saying you got to go first.
Well, just because I may focus on the SEC more doesn't make my picks more accurate than what y'all are going to pick.
Well, you're going to be about maybe 33% right.
Yeah, I'm usually about 33% right, and as long as I get number 4 right, that's all that matters to me.
Well, we all know that I'm the smart one, so let's just
you're bald because you let that brain breathe.
Yeah, he needed extra cooling, some extra air cooling.
That's right. It's processing so much. He's just I had to get the hair gone to get the cooling in there.
That's right.
That's why I don't wear a hat like Michael.
I'll go ahead and start us. Hey, my hat can breathe, so I'll go ahead and get us started. And we'll do like what we did for the previous episodes. We started number 5, go all the way down to our number 1. So my number 5 in the top 5 SEC, I've got Bama, and I know that's going to throw a lot of people off because they should be, according to every Bama fan way out there too. Bama's my number 5.
Yeah, just like the polls. They're number 5 on polls.
Yeah, but this is different. There's only 5 teams.
SEC.
There's only 5 teams I'm picking, not 25.
We don't get the poll book.
Yeah, so I'm putting them top 5 in the SEC, but I've got them number 5. They're only returning 44% of their production on a good metric day, and they're while they lost a lot, they did do decently at returning production from a standpoint of I shouldn't say returning production. They did well in bringing in some players from the portal. They still didn't bring in as many as they lost, which is a big deal. The other thing is you've got a coaching staff overhaul. As we've already said, regardless of whether or not you've got a good coach, it doesn't change the fact that you're probably going to run into issues with the way the play style, things like that. As Dennis was talking about before, you got a new quarterback who likes to run a lot more than Penix could before, or even liked to, even when he was healthy. And the thing is, Milroe, though, does play a different type of ball than what DeBoer tends to run offensively. DeBoer tends to run a wide out, more Heupel style, Baylor style offense, and Milroe may not, like, according to the reports, he's doing really well in fall camp. I'm not saying that he isn't. I'm just saying it's easy to do relatively well in scrimmages with your own team. Let's see what happens when you get outside of that. And it's just one of those things, like, I think we're probably going to see for the first time in 16, 17 years a Alabama team that has single-digit wins. I wouldn't be, as I said before, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Alabama team go 9-3. They got some tough teams that they have to play this year, and they have to play them at not necessarily great places where they're going to be favored as much as they used to be, especially with Saban at the helm, or Saban not at the helm. So that's really going to be my thing, is like how does Milroe fit into the system? Is DeBoer running into issues with it being a whole new coaching staff? And how are the balance of powers going to be different in the SEC right now, especially with all of the upheaval that's happened just in the past 6 months, 8 months. So that's my number 5.
All right, Dennis, you go next.
Oh,
I was gonna let you.
No, you go next. Best for last, my friend. Best for last.
So why? You're not used to being first. Oh, Ohio State is not even used to being first. Why are you going the best thing?
Because I know.
I'll just let it. I'll do it to be. Best headshine that we have here on our podcast. I'll let.
That's right.
So my number 5, I'm gonna actually agree here with Michael. I do think Bama's gonna be number 5, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do just have a single, just 9-win team. I do have high hopes though for Milroe and DeBoer. I feel like he's going to bring him, as I mentioned earlier, bring him to the next level in his passing game, bring him up to another skill. Bama does have a lot of players that leave, a lot of key players that left, but they were able to retain talent. And I feel like with DeBoer's history of just being able to, everywhere he's gone, yes, every conference is different, but he's able to show progress in every single conference almost immediately. He was only at Washington for 2 years. He made yes, I get it, it's the Pac, it's not the SEC, but he went from 2 losses the first season to national championship the second season with Washington. Washington before him wasn't really a playoff contender, let alone a national contender. So I don't think he's going to be there yet just because how the SEC conference is, but I do have Bama at number 5. I'm just actually really excited to see how Milroe is going to be able to perform and a DeBoer more friendly offensive coordinator, head coach who's offensive, more friendly. I do want to say with one asterisk, and this is because it's the same exact reason. I do also have Tennessee. I would have Tennessee at 5 too, because the same reason. I love the head coach. It's the quarterback I have a question about. Both great, both talented players, but it's a new setting. Nico's never played, like, before the bowl game, never actually played. So it's like, hey, you're being introduced with a lot of expectations. But I have them at 5.
Well, guys, we are 3 for 3.
Oh wow!
All of us are choosing Bama at number 5. I know. I think that might be. Same thing. I mean, you guys, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. I think that talent-wise, Alabama, easily is a top 5 team, maybe in the country, when you look top to bottom. But the coaches, I just have a question about. Milroe, I just have a question about. It's can DeBoer come in and from the get-go get this team to play his system, his way, and take over the SEC? I don't see it. Same reasons we talked about the AP. I think that I have them starting off kind of further back than a lot of people do because of those questions. I understand that I was going to say I could be very wrong. We could be very wrong about this, and they may end up,
Michael will somehow be wrong. We will be right.
Right, exactly, because we are all falling in line with Michael.
True.
But yeah, I like their returning production. We've got the 5-star offensive tackle, Caden Proctor, who went to Iowa from there and came back and, all that kind of stuff. They got that Keon Sabb from Michigan. I think that they've gotten some great transfers in, but I still have them as number 5.
Let me do you one favor, Luke. They lost. Unfortunately, they lost a key player to Ohio State. I feel like
They lost 2.
They lost 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say Ohio State. I'm like,
I've already mentioned Ohio State in this episode, so I didn't need to fit it in anywhere else.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean,
they lost Caleb Downs, but again, I think that's Caleb Downs is a big loss for them. But again, I don't see it being as. I mean, it's a big loss. You can't. He's one of the most talented guys in college football. You can't just replace that. But the replacements they got, I think they're going to do a decent job of kind of by numbers, even if it's not talent, that one talented guy, they've got the numbers to kind of compensate for the loss there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that brings us to number 4, my number 4, and I know there are going to be people in the comments that are going to claim this is a homer pick. I know there are going to be people on this podcast that are going to claim this is a homer pick. But I do have Tennessee, the real UT. Suck it, Texas. I had to do that. I haven't done that.
As confirmed by the SEC.
As confirmed by the SEC. But I do have Tennessee. The Tennessee's returning production stat is actually heavily skewed because of one particular area. And if you look at most of the things, they're going to be like right around where Alabama's is. But the thing is, Tennessee didn't lose. They didn't lose valuable people at the place that they lost, where they lost. They lost their secondary, one of the worst secondaries in the SEC last year.
It favors them to lose.
So they're good.
Right.
They were actually.
There wasn't much production there.
From what it sounds like, they legitimately actually from what I've heard, the reports that I've heard is they actually asked them to leave. They're like
imagine that.
Like you
slip to leave, please.
Like go to the portal. We're not going to chase you. We're not going to pursue you because the type of secondary that they're trying to build, because they have guys that are freshmen and sophomore that are way faster, they know how to play the ball a little bit better. And you brought in a new linebacker coach, which I know not technically secondary, but but you bring in a new linebacker coach who was one of the defensive coordinators for Washington, who had they had a phenomenal linebacker core. And you're maintaining, if not strengthening, the number 1 defensive line in the country. From a standpoint of depth, they've got more depth in their defensive line than Georgia does. Let that sink in. People always think about Georgia being such a defensive powerhouse because they are. But right now, if you look at
they hang out with a lot of defensive attorneys.
They understand that real well.
They take a lot of defensive driving courses.
Unfortunately, they're not very good at the defensive driving courses yet.
They don't pay attention.
But just like Dennis was saying that his kind of like his alternate for the top 5 was Tennessee because of Nico being an unknown. I would say that Nico actually helps push them over Alabama. And Milroe, while I get it, he's a proven asset on the field, he's now playing in a different system. We're talking about the number 1 quarterback from the 2023, actually number 1 overall pick for the class of 2023, who was handpicked by your offensive coordinator and your coach. So he's playing in the system that is designed for him. There's a very big difference between trying to make someone mold to your system versus who both talent. You got talent in DeBoer and talent in Milroe, but you're having to mold each other. Whereas you've had a kid who sat in your system and soaked it up and learned for the past year and a half, because he's been practicing with Tennessee before the Orange Bowl game in 2023.
Yep.
So that's all big deal. I get it. He's only started one game, but in that game that he started, he put more rushing touchdowns, or he doubled the amount of rushing touchdowns Iowa allowed all last year.
I mean, as much as Iowa did themselves as well.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true too. That's also that's not a hard metric to beat though. And so it's just one of those things that from all of the reports that coming out of fall camp, all are showing that Nico is commanding the offense like a general, which is great. But again, let's see how it translates on the field. I think that Heupel has spent a lot of time reinforcing that defense is going to look a lot more elite, at least in the front side of the defense this year, even more so than they were last year. But then you've got a lot more depth, especially at receiver. They've brought in so many crazy, incredibly talented receivers. You've got Brew McCoy, who was the 5-star transfer from USC, who got injured in the South Carolina game last year. He was out for the season. He is back at full health. And
that ankle can be brutal.
That's true. But he was doing some crazy cuts, and I saw some videos. He's doing some crazy cuts, and he was handling it all perfect. And I mean, talk about a kid who literally just has like sandpaper for hands. He just catches anything that's thrown towards him. So I think that my number, again, I've been a little long-winded here, but number 4 is Tennessee for me in the SEC. I think that they've got a more favorable schedule than Bama does. And while they have some tough games, and they're probably going to drop one to Georgia, I could easily see them going at 10-2 or 11-1.
Yeah.
So, Dennis.
No, I mean, to my honest opinion, I feel like any of teams after the top 3 in the SEC, I feel like it's going to be a given. I feel like we're going to agree in the top 3, maybe not the order, but the top 3 teams.
Probably, yeah.
But when it comes to any teams beyond that, I feel like it's a free-for-all for several teams. And again, I include Bama in that. I include UT, Tennessee in that, and several even other schools outside that we didn't even mention.
Mm-hmm.
But my number 4, for a few different reasons, is going to be Missouri. I feel like they have an extremely favorable schedule on their hand.
That they do.
I'm expecting a lot of things, a lot of growth from quarterback Brady Cook. And honestly, I'm excited to watch the wide receiver Luther Burden, the third. You know, I got to say the third. You know, he's not the second. He's not the first, third. And so
his daddy playing.
Exactly. So I feel like they're going to be a lot more dynamic, and I feel like people already expect that too. So I expect a lot of growth from last year to this year. The only question I have is, which I know we've said in previous episodes, is their defense. They lost the defense coordinator, how they're going to adapt. But I genuinely feel like how strong their offense very much can be, and how favorable the schedule is for them. By no means I think they're going to be undefeated, but I feel like if you add the favorable schedule, how dynamic their offense could be, because it's not just those 2 players. It's I feel like a good chunk of the receiving core, even their just general backfield, it can definitely come in their favor to being competitive overall in the SEC conference, and definitely get a spot in the college football playoffs.
I really hate to say this, but Dennis, you and I agree.
Hey, man.
I know this is tough. Now I'm kind of with you. My 5 pick was kind of between the Alabama, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I went with Alabama just for experience, even though I really hope that I'm wrong, and I really hope that that Tennessee does what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Now Missouri, like you said, the big thing for them is defense. They had 12 transfers come in. They had a 4-star linebacker, Jeremiah Beasley, come in, who was previously at Michigan. I'm not sure why he left, but hey, you know, who knows? And then they had a 4. What's that? Yeah, he's bringing it with him.
No more. I don't need to be here.
Right. But then they also had a 4-star edge from Georgia, Darius Smith. So they had a couple guys come in on that defensive front that's going to, I think, kind of help them bolster their defense. But the main reason that I went with Missouri at 4 is because of that schedule. The Missouri football schedule, for being an SEC schedule, is one of the easiest schedules that's on there. When you go through it, I mean, they play Texas A&M, That's a ranked team. Again, why is it a ranked team?
Yeah,
They play
the easiest
Alabama and Oklahoma.
Yeah,
so
it is the easiest schedule in the SEC. We're not debating that at all.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm just saying it's an easy schedule. I think they're going to get through it probably with one loss somewhere. But the main thing is I think that they've improved their defense and schedule.
You think they improved their defense?
I do.
Okay.
I mean, they had a pretty good defense last year. I'm not going to even lie.
Yeah.
Like,
again, their defense was good last year because of their defensive coordinator. Their defensive coordinator knew how to draw up schemes and schematics that no other team had seen that up until that point. And
sure,
I think that's a much bigger loss.
They are getting quality players.
Right. And I think that's where I'm coming from is they lost a coach. Again, I think that they got defensive players to come in that are going to help them out a whole lot, that are going to kind of help bridge that gap between a new defensive coordinator. But again, for the beyond that and more so than that, it's just the schedule. And I think their schedule is just going to be what makes them. And honestly, if they had a harder schedule, if their strength of schedule was worse, I would probably have had them outside of the top 5 and would have had Bama at 4 and Tennessee at 5.
By the way, just to make you guys both feel better and not have any more nightmares, Cody Schrader is not on Missouri no more.
Oh, God.
So just letting you know. I know.
Yeah.
I've seen Michael kind of like panicking, join our group chat and just like texting. He's like, "Oh man, I thought it was last year again." And then Luke's like, "Oh man, I thought we lost the bowl game. I thought we got killed again." So I enjoyed it, but just want to give you guys some relief.
Yeah, I'm not worried as much about Missouri this year. But anyways, again, I understand why you guys picked them. Aside from that, like, I think they're a team that's going to end up dropping a lot of games because they're going to look past opponents. And I think Drinkwitz is I think he's a joke of head coach. And that, like, I think less of him than I think of Deion Sanders. And like, again, he's got a losing record in the SEC. He had one good season, guys. Like, let's call it what he's had, one winning season. So
you don't have to get mad, Michael.
No, it's just again, there's Missouri's talked a lot of smack this offseason against Tennessee when they know they're not playing Tennessee this year. Like, that's just low. Like, that's stupid. Like, come on, man. And so I just don't have any respect for teams that do stuff like that. I'm perfectly fine with Georgia wanting to do it or Alabama wanting to do it because they know that they play us.
Sure.
I just have an issue with, like, Tennessee wasn't talking smack to Missouri. So, anyway.
I'm sure you can find it on Twitter.
No.
Twitter.
I'm talking about like actual players.
Oh, okay.
Missouri players have been talking smack about Tennessee.
I'm a little surprised. I'm not gonna lie to you.
So and it's not just Missouri players. Drinkwitz has also been doing it. So
that's that Kool-Aid, man. You gotta drink the wits of the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you got to stand on business. Anyways, so we'll go to our number 3. And again, I as I think both of you both said, like, I got a feeling that our top 3 is going to be probably interchangeable, all same teams. But I've got my number third team is Ole Miss. They're returning 70% of their production. They're returning third most production in the entire SEC. And again, they're not just returning production, the production they're returning is incredibly veteran. And they also pulled a lot of veteran players from the portal. They're bolstered. They're making a play for the national championship that is only beat out by Ohio State. That's, like, from a standpoint, and I agree with Dennis, it's probably somewhat of a bag issue. There's not as much money at Ole Miss as there is in Ohio State, and that's not to knock on Ohio State at all, because they're a bigger program. They've always been a bigger program in that world. So it's one of those things that this is kind of a make it or break it year. If they can make it to the Natty, I I don't think Lane Kiffin's going to ever have to worry about finding a job anywhere, whether they win or not. Like if he makes it there, but I'd say he's at minimum going to make a 2 or 3 game, like or 2 game run into the football playoff at minimum. Sure. And again, he's surrounded with so much depth, with so much like just incredible talent on both sides of the ball. And so that's why I got him at number 3.
No, I mean, I got him at number 3 too. You know, for very much the same reasons you've said. They lost the key running back to some random school up like further north, which I feel like was a little bit of a setback. But Lane Kiffin, though, if he knows one thing, is offense, and I feel like he's going to be able to find a quick and easy replacement that I don't want to say is just as good, but can definitely do a very fair amount of damage on their own as well too, either the one player or by committee. I feel like Ole Miss is definitely there, and exactly like I said, I feel like it's more or less a make it or break it year, and I don't want to say it's their year to win it all because I feel like there's other teams in the SEC and just general college football that are better or have better chances, but Ole Miss is definitely not a team to be overlooked by, and I do feel they're a top 5 team in college football.
Yeah, Ole Miss definitely, like, they're shooting their shot. Like that's what they're doing this year. For my number 3 pick, guys, this is really crazy, but I'm going with Texas as my number 3 team. I think that Ewers is poised to have a great year. I think that him coming back is really what keeps Texas in that top 3 for me. Their defense, I think you could argue, is going to take a little bit of a step backwards this year. Not maybe not a full step, half step. It's not going to be as great in my opinion. The wide receiver room, I think, still looks good, even after they lost a few guys. But they brought in Isaiah Bond, right, from I think a 5-star from Alabama. Yeah. So the receiver room's looking good. But I think with to kind of mold into my number 2, and I'll just go ahead and do my number 2 as well. Ole Miss is going to be my number 2 pick here. For all of the reasons that you said, I think that they added a lot of upperclassmen coming in, a lot of leadership in that role, even though it's really hard for me to say the word leadership, knowing that they brought in Princely, Princely Manamelayan, whatever his name is, who we talked about in not so good terms last year quite a few times.
Maybe just I'm not new next.
Yeah, I do. I do. But just thinking about what he did, when he was making fun of Utah when Florida was going there, things like that. But he also has said that as he got there, that he's actually being coached. Better, differently. Hey, every player has their own opinion for that. Sure. But that he's being coached better. So I personally, for my number 2 being Ole Miss, I'm very high on Jackson Dart. I think that he's going to play his way this year into a top 10 status going into the draft next year. You mentioned the loss of Judkins to some random team up north, and it's going to be really hard to replace Judkins, who I think led the SEC 2 years in a row in rushing. But I think they're going to have to rely on Dart a little bit more, which is why they're going to end up, why he's going to end up playing himself into a top 10 pick. And I think that he's just poised to have a really good year. So I've got them at number 2.
Fair enough. So
sorry to take that from you, Michael.
No,
first for your number 2.
You're good. I just wanted to set the record straight, though. Judkins did not lead the SEC last year. That was Cody Schrader.
Not?
Yeah, that was Rain.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
By a long shot.
Was it?
No.
Okay. Well, he led 2 years ago.
Yeah. It was a lot. But it was not. This is only 500 yards.
Okay. Well,
so it was a lot.
My notes were wrong.
You're good. It's all good. Sometimes your notes can be wrong, and that's fine. But Judkins has always been at the top, in the top 3 somewhere.
Yeah.
And so
but he's a big missable player.
I think that he is, for Ole Miss, it sounded like he was not a great culture fit for them. So, and I think he's going to get a lot more discipline up in Ohio State, because that's the thing. I don't see Lane Kiffin being such a disciplinarian. Like, and I'm not saying that Ryan Day is.
Right.
It's just more of there's certain people just respond differently to different types of leadership. So
and you've got a different team culture in Ohio State. Ohio State is a lot of upperclassmen, a lot of guys who are kind of hey, we're doing it the right way.
Sure.
Whereas Ole Miss is a little more loosey goosey.
Yeah, and
well, they very much are respected, the very next in line type scenario, and it shows in their leadership very much.
Sure. I have some for my number 2. I've got Texas, and that's just more of just putting respect on Sark, and he did really well with the portal this year. I mean, they're returning 67% of their production, which is great. The thing with Texas that's interesting for me is they have probably one of the best QB room situations that you could ask for in the country right now.
Yeah.
And your QB1, QB2 is kind of interchangeable at this point. Like, Texas they have a luxury that Tennessee wished they had last year. And some Tennessee fans, I was one of them, assumed that we were going to have a similar situation. But you have Ewers, and then you have Manning right behind him, and every indicator is showing that Manning is going to ball out over there. You're adding great wide receivers. You already have a stacked wide receiver core. The biggest issue for Texas is going to be their running back room. It's taken super big hits over the past few weeks, and so it'll be interesting to see if they can pull that off. The other thing this is the reason why I wouldn't ever put I as of right now could not put them at number 1, is Sark tends to have issues with playmaking in really critical moments within a game. He kind of, to me, has in the past few years has kind of come across as a Ryan Day at times, where he'll pick the wrong play, but the right thought process behind the like and so it's like okay,
choice is like, man, that was the wrong one.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, you should have done a throw, but you should have done a throw to the other side of the field. Like,
right,
like that's and I get some of that with your quarterback. Huh?
Sounds like he had Milton at quarterback.
Well, that's a very different issue. Neither one of them had to deal with that nonsense. But I think Texas, I think Sark is an awesome guy who is building a awesome culture out at Texas.
Yep.
I think that they continue to build their momentum that they've been building over the past year and a half, 2 years. They're going to be consistently vying for that number 1 spot. If Sark goes anywhere else, I feel like Texas is going to drop back off pretty hard, because I think he's kind of the linchpin to why they're doing what they're doing. And it shows a lot of character in him as to why he decided not to leave in the midst of the Saban retirement. So
sure.
Dennis,
my number 2 is coming from very smart group of people, and my information is telling me that Vanderbilt people that I spoke to were right.
So Vanderbilt chose Texas.
Vanderbilt chose, actually, UGA is going to be number 2.
Okay.
Because I feel like compared to the previous years, this year, they're going to be challenged early and often this season. The past was last year, I think they didn't get challenged till like mid or to late October or something like that. Like now,
when they played Alabama.
Yeah. Like, so like it was a while before they even got challenged by their teams. And now, like, hey, they're getting challenged, I would say for the most part, if 1 week yes, 1 week no, but like a lot more consistent than before. Like now, hey, first game of the year, you got Clemson. And then you're going to play at Bama, you're going to play at Auburn, like you're going to play at Texas. Like you have consistent games. They're going to be playing one after another. And to be honest, I feel like Georgia what's going to happen is the fact that the reason part they're not going to lose is not just also their schedule. It's also because their players are going to not play. They keep getting in so much trouble. I think the past month, what has it been like? I feel like every 2-3 days, we get a notification on our phone like, hey, this person got arrested. This person is getting charges on them. And it's like, just stay inside. Stay in the
Just play Grand Theft Auto or Grand Turismo or something like
made for Spade on your place.
If you want to feel like you're doing, play VR.
Yeah.
Don't actually do it. Just play VR and just be fine.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you count those things, the being tested early and often, I feel like this year on their schedule is going to come to play, and just stay out of trouble.
Sure.
Stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. Well, so kind of rolling off of that, I'm going to go into my number one pick. Since Luke decided to do two at one time. Come on.
Why special?
Yeah. So Vanderbilt is my number one. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Hey, somebody chose it. Somebody chose it.
Yeah. No.
And there are some people, they at the top.
There's always that one person. No, I've got.
We're not talking about academic top five.
Well, I've got UGA as my number one. The part of the reason for that is because of the fact that what Georgia kind of showed after the SEC championship, one, they showed some character by actually playing their bowl game. Like, I don't want to hear it from FSU fans, like, that you got all these opt-outs. Georgia did too. Like, let's not play that game. Like, you just didn't have the same depth that they did, and they steamrolled you. Just own it. And I think that what Georgia proved is that they were legitimately one of the top two best teams in the SEC. There wasn't a fluke that them and Bama played in that championship. But they made a really good argument for why they should have been playing against Michigan and not Bama. They're returning a good chunk of their production, about 68%. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Their quarterback room, they'll sit there and claim that they've got a phenomenal quarterback room. I haven't been really that impressed with them. Their spring spring game looked a little rough to some degree, and especially since you had you had to keep your number one quarterback in for the majority of that game just to keep your offense running. It's not usually a good sign. But aside from that, like, you do have a top tier coaching staff, hands down. You brought in on the coaching staff side.
I feel like their coaching staff is more loaded than the players. I'm not going to.
Yeah, no, they brought in more talent this offseason by adding in one of the best defensive coordinators and coaches from Bama. You're stacking the deck. All culture problems aside, because culture problems do exist. I hate to say that, Josh Pate, but they do have culture problems, and you can't have 22 plus arrests in the past 2 or 18 months and not call it a culture problem. Aside from that, I do genuinely believe that Smart is trying to deal with it. I don't think that it's something that he accepts or is okay with. I just think that there's a problem in Athens, and he's trying to figure out how to fix it. Aside from that,
he's had it before him, so I feel like it's not something he could change even in a few seasons. I feel like it's going to be a couple generations.
It's a problem in Athens. Yes. Yeah. And because I know Mark Richt had the same issues out there. And it just wasn't to this level or this degree. And it's because you've got NIL, you've got Georgia at the top. You're bringing in number one players across the country, and they've all got giant egos.
And you just don't have the same amount of media coverage then as you do now. You don't have people that are watching every single little move. People are sitting outside watching everything that goes on, whereas back in the day, unless they came out and said, oh, hey, we had this happen, there's a good chance you might have missed it.
Exactly.
I think if Georgia kind of does what Ohio State's kind of been doing, or it seems like they're doing, and what Tennessee has been doing, where like if they had the upperclassmen kind of showing the underclassmen and the new people just kind of come in overall, just transfers or not, that can definitely calm down Georgia. And honestly, like, no one would have probably ever questioned them about anything. But until that's why they're my number too, personally.
Yeah, and I mean, again, they're my number one. I think that they've been sneaky good for the past few years in a way that honestly makes me question whether or not they have their own stallions. I choke. But seriously, no. But I agree with you, Dennis. I think that they've got an actual gauntlet this year. They deserve it. They've had a cupcake of a schedule for the past 3 years, and so it's phenomenal that they actually get to go and flex their muscles, see what they're actually made of. But that's my number one pick, and come and fight me in the comments below if you think I'm right or wrong. So,
and I guess it's kind of obvious now. Like already you mentioned Vanderbilt. You know, my number one is going to be Texas. For a few different reasons. I feel like they have the talent to compete. Exactly how you guys said earlier. They have the quarterback room. They have incoming players or transfers, and I feel like that all that is going to be a benefit towards them. They got key players from even Bama, like Isaiah Bond, as Luke mentioned earlier, and so I feel like it's going to keep increasing the competitive. I feel like Preseason has been working to have his roster compete with the SEC for the past couple of years now.
sure.
It's not just something, hey, well, I've had to do that recently. No, I feel like he's had a couple of years knowing that that's going to happen, that he's going to build up to it. Questions I feel like are going to come, hey, how's their secondary going to last if it's going to compete? I know they lost a couple of running backs up with the past couple of years, either for a few weeks, a few months, or the entire season. But can I remind you guys what happened last year? Who also lost 2 running backs just before the season started? Washington. They lost 2 running backs from the very beginning, and their starters, mind you. And look where they got. I feel like Texas has a bit more talent. Definitely has a bit more talent than Washington had last year. Jersey knows how to control his team. So there's not going to be any behavioral issues. And again, he has the roster to compete with the SEC. And that's why I feel like they're going to be winning the SEC conference. And to all respect to Georgia, as well as the football team and everything, the fans, I hope to ignore you year round. But as far as the football team and everything like that, a lot of respect for the coaching staff. Players are great. If they don't step over themselves, it's Texas to win.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it, and I've obviously got Georgia as my number one. I kind of see Georgia as how Bama used to be, or I guess I'm going to say Saban, where you just don't bet against them. You know, it's their, if they trip over themselves, you know, they're going to be the ones that beat themselves. You know, you talked about their schedule and how tough their schedule is and how they actually have to test themselves. And I think one of the things that could be very scary about Georgia is if they do very well when they test themselves. If you see them go in and take care of Clemson, you know, at the first game of the year, they get the steam rolling. Obviously, Tennessee Tech is going to be a team that they're going to beat.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a tough game for them.
Yeah, that was going to be tough. You know, they play Kentucky next, which is going to be sneaky good. You know, Kentucky's not a pushover.
Nope.
There.
Early in the year. Early in the year, they are a different team.
Yeah, when they get hurt week 8, that's going to be different.
That's the fall off right there.
Right. But then you go into the Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, Texas, Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee. And that gauntlet right there, if they can make it through that gauntlet, then they're going to be a scary team.
Yeah, forget about Georgia Tech.
At Georgia Tech, yeah. I mean, Georgia Tech and the ACC, like that's not a gimme game.
No.
So realistically speaking, they've got 2 games this year that are, you know, they should beat UMass. They should beat Tennessee Tech. All the other ones they should win, but there's a good chance that somebody pulls an upset on them. So
I gotta say this one thing though. I feel like Georgia somehow cheated to get Massachusetts on their schedule. I think Massachusetts the past couple of years have only won like 1 game in the past I think 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, I get it. You went through a battle, but why?
Yeah,
it just means more.
Yeah, well, that's why we need to talk about super conferences.
Come back up.
Like we need all the Goliaths to play each other all year round.
Yeah, beat up on each other.
That's right.
Let the FCS teams shine.
Yep. We'll make sure everybody comment below who's right.
Yeah.
Make sure you subscribe because we need that. And yeah, let us know. Let us know who's right.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Let us know who's right, which we all know it's me. But it's all good. I mean, it's good. It clearly Dennis.
Agree with Michael because he's gonna have a lot of misses throughout the year.
Yeah, just agree.
Let him some teams start high. Let him be like Notre Dame and Penn State. Let him be highly ranked. You know,
Exactly.
Give him all the self-esteem he could possibly need, and probably not even show up in the top.
That's one of the reasons why I'm so happy that Tennessee is not in the top 10. Like,
Just don't have to worry about the fall.
Yep. Well, no. Like, it's an easier path to get into the top 10 than it is like to fall out and then come back in.
Yeah, I mean, they have the schedule to even like keep going back and forth.
Yeah. But yeah. Anyways, well, thanks again for joining us tonight. Comment below, like the video, share it. Come back next week. Join the conversation.